Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming this evening. It's about 6:05. I know we're still going to have some people come in, and that's okay. But I want to go ahead and get started. That way we can work through and make sure we get through everything and answer questions at the end. So my name is Sasha Biello. I'm the Director of Adult and Recreation Services at Valley Forge Educational Services. As you can see on your screen, this is just kind of an idea of our agenda for tonight. So we're going to do some introductions. I'm going to talk a little bit about adult and recreation services. Then we have a presenter who came to join us tonight. We're so thankful that Disha Upal could come, Disha Upal could come and join us from ASERT. She's going to talk to you guys tonight about Waiver. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. And we'll go from there. So just a little bit about Valley Forge Educational Services. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with us. You might be parents from the Vanguard School or maybe alumni from the Vanguard School. If not, that's great. We're glad you heard of us and you came to our session tonight. Valley Forge Educational Services prepares children and adults with special needs to realize their potential as contributing members of the community. We are a nonprofit in Malvern, Pennsylvania that offers educational, summer, and employment-related programs through two signature programs, one being the Vanguard School, which you heard me just mention. The Vanguard School is an approved private school in Pennsylvania, and they serve students ages 4 through 21. All students with disabilities. We also have Adult and Recreation Services, which is our newest program, which houses our specialized recreation services and our customized workforce solutions and adult employment services programs. I'm going to talk a little bit about the second Adult and Recreation Services for you. Here we go. So customized workforce solutions is one of our arms of adult and recreation services, if you will. Customized Workforce Solutions, CWS, is our adult employment services. So through that, we offer community-based work assessments, job finding and development, and job support. So community-based work assessments, just real briefly, I know this might be new terminology for a lot of you. So community-based work assessments are an opportunity for our employment specialists to work with participants in the community to get an idea of what they're able to do on a job site and what they're interested in. So it serves two purposes, and it allows our employment specialists to get an idea of what type of job to look for that particular participant in their community. Once we've gone through that process, or if someone comes to us who's already gone through that process, we're happy to help find a job for participants in the community. So we go into whatever community our participant lives. So just because we're located in Malvern doesn't mean you need to come to Malvern. We serve Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties, and we help individuals with disabilities look for jobs competitively employed where they would earn minimum wage or higher. Once we find them a job that meets their interests and their ability, we offer job support services, which a lot of people know as job coaching. So we go in and we support our participants on the job to help them learn the tasks and help them be successful. But we fade out as they become more and more independent. So every person's different. So depending on the level of support that they need, will determine how long our employment specialists stay with them on the job. Another part of our adult employment services is the vocational immersion program, or VIP. VIP is a 4-week summer program that serves adults ages 18 to 24. So these can be students who are still in school. It could be for people who have taken their diploma at 18, but might still want a little bit of a summer experience to kind of dip their toe in the employment water. So the 4 weeks is an opportunity for our participants to try employment. It's a volunteer experience, but it's only 4 weeks. It's a combination of seminars teaching soft skills, executive functioning skills, in addition to going out into a work site and part-time trying it out, see how they like it. You can see on the screen here, we have a young man who's feeding a giraffe. One of our business partners last summer was Elmwood Park Zoo. So they got to go out and work with the animals at the zoo. So the nice part about this program that sets it apart from other programs is the final week of VIP is an independent living residency week. So we have our participants move into an extended stay hotel, which is set up like an apartment. They get the experience of living with roommates while it's fully staffed as well. So staff is available to them while they're at the extended stay hotel, but they're encouraged to be as independent as possible. So we ask that, they do their laundry at least one night during the week, that they, practice going to bed on time because they have to get up and go to work for a full day the next day. So they learn how to make dinner, eat with roommates, pack their lunch for work the next day, those sorts of things. The other side of adult and recreation services is our specialized recreation services. This branch serves ages 7 and older. So we break it down into 2 age groups, ages 7 to 21. So that's for our school age students or participants. And then we recently started offering recreation services to adults over the age of 21. So as you can see here, we offer respite retreats for our adults over the age of 21. We offer Camp Anava, which is in Spring City, Pennsylvania. We have 2 weekends there throughout the year. And then we have Fenwick Island, which is 1 week, and that's happening in August this year. That's the first time, this is the first year we're offering respite retreats for adults over the age of 21 because COVID put a wrench in that the first time we tried to do it back in 2020. So we're happy to get that up and moving and look forward to growing that program as well. For our participants under the age of 21, we offer more options. Each trip, so you see I have a few listed here. Mount Gilead is in the Poconos, Fenwick Island in Delaware, and Camp Quebec is a camp that we rent out in Schwenksville, Pennsylvania. These opportunities happen multiple times a year. In each trip has a different age bracket. So I say 7 to 21, but Fenwick Island, we don't take 7-year-olds to Delaware. So that one's for our older students. So each one just has a different age group, but in general, all the programs, all the respite retreats serve age 7 to 21, depending on the program. So we offer weekend retreats throughout the school year. We offer a Fenwick Island week in the summer. We also offer Fenwick Island weekend, I believe, in the spring. And Camp Quebec, we have a 2-week summer camp, overnight and day camp in August. And then we offer some Camp Quebec weekends throughout the year. And Mount Gilead, we offer twice a year as a weekend trip, one in the fall and one in the spring. And lastly, we also offer adult social activities. This is pretty new since things have loosened up with COVID. I put up on the screen just some of the upcoming social events, but we do plan social events throughout the year. So as you'll see coming up in May, we have, well, it's already May, but the next couple weeks in May, we have a miniature golf trip to Waltz's, lunch at the Devon Horse Show. And then in June, we have a trip to Art and Theater, and then we're doing lunch at the Elmwood Park Zoo. So these are set up like meetups. So unfortunately, at this point, because we're so new at this, we don't provide transportation. These are activities that we would meet up and do together. But if you would like more information about any of the social activities or actually any of the specialized recreation services, anything on this side of the screen, feel free to reach out or RSVP to any of the events to Michelle Seal, and her email address is here on the screen. That's miseel@vfes.net. And if there's any questions about any of these, feel free to type them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. And finally, the reason you came, so I'm so happy to introduce our speaker for tonight, Disha Upal. She is the Clinical Outreach Coordinator at ASERT. I know there's a much longer one, I'm sorry, Disha. She's the Clinical and Outreach Coordinator with the Philadelphia Autism Project and the Autism Services Education Resources and Training Collaborative, which is ASERT. She comes to us with experience leading and developing and implementing community programming. She manages ASERT's Eastern Region Resource Center and has over 5 years of experience in case management and school-based services. So I have no doubt that Disha is going to provide some wonderful, very helpful information to all of you about waivers and transition. And if you registered with us through our forms app and you submitted some questions, Disha has those questions and she will be happy to answer those at the end of the presentation. If you think of any questions as she goes through her presentation, feel free to type them in the chat box, and we will definitely bring them to her attention to answer them for you. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Disha. Thank you, Disha.
Thanks so much, Sasha. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, just bear with me for one moment as I pull up my slides. Thank you so much, Sasha, for that wonderful introduction. And hello, everyone. Again, my name is Disha Uppal. I work with the ASERT Eastern Region Collaborative and the Philadelphia Autism Project. A lot of what I do across projects at the Policy and Analytics Center is developing and implementing community programming initiatives and innovative service models, as well as supporting resource creation and navigation efforts for families in Philadelphia and across the state. And as Sasha mentioned, in my previous roles, I have supported individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism navigate waiver services, which is a lot of what I'll be talking about today. So I'm going to just start off with a brief introduction about ASERT and kind of, some of the resources and services that we offer. And then I'll go into and talk a little bit about the waiver programs in Pennsylvania, share some of our resources. If we have some time, I can walk you through our website. And then just do a little wrap up at the end. So what is ASERT? ASERT stands for Autism Services, Education, Resources, and Training Collaborative. I know it's a mouthful at times. We're funded through the Bureau of Supports for Autism and Special Populations, which is BSASP, and under the Office of Developmental Programs and the Department of Human Services in Pennsylvania. So ASERT is really a unique partnership of private and public entities. So we are publicly funded through DHS and based at private institutions throughout the state. So here in the Eastern region, we're based at the A.J. Drexel Autism Institute, where I work. In the Central region, we're based at Penn State College of Medicine at the Hershey Medical Center. And then in the Western region, we're based at Western Behavioral Health Center for Autism and Developmental Disorders. And we really serve as the technical assistant. Sometimes I like to think of us as a third arm and key component for BSASP's strategy for supporting individuals on the autism spectrum throughout Pennsylvania. And I really like to think of ASERT first and foremost as kind of a one-stop shop for all of your resource needs. So as I mentioned a little bit later, I can definitely walk through our website, but we have a wide range of resources, ranging from everything from physical health, mental health, social stories, voting, really a great, range of resources. So I hope that some of those will be helpful for you all. We also have a few data projects that you can check out if you're interested. So we've conducted a Pennsylvania autism census, which is an administrative census where we looked at how many people in the state of Pennsylvania are receiving autism services. We've also conducted a Pennsylvania autism needs assessment. So we've sent out surveys to caregivers of individuals under the age of 21 or self-advocates over the age of 21. And they've been able to share some of their service needs and what might be going well and what might not be going well. So both of those data projects are available on our website, and the results are up on our website if you're interested in learning more. As I mentioned, we do a lot of work around resource creation and navigation and have what's called a warm line. So we have a phone number and email, so you can call or email in, and you'll reach, if you're calling in, you'll reach a voicemail where you'll be prompted to leave a message, and one of our staff will get back to you in 1 to 3 business days to help support and connect you with resources. And then lastly is educate. So we offer free tailored training such as this one to autistic individuals, families, professionals, and community members. And so with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the waiver programs in Pennsylvania. So before we get into what waiver programs there are, I just wanted to talk kind of broadly about what a waiver even is. So a waiver is a Medicaid program, which is run by the state and designed for certain groups of people who need extra supports to live in their community. So there are a lot of different types of waivers. There's waivers for people who have physical disabilities. And then so today I'm specifically going to talk about waivers for autistic individuals and individuals with intellectual disabilities. To get waiver, so waiver services are not an entitlement. So when individuals are in the education system, when they're still in high school, the services that they receive through the school system are an entitlement, which means that they're entitled to receive those services. The waiver services provided through the waivers are not an entitlement. And what that means is that you need to apply and be found eligible to receive those services. And just a little bit, of history. At one time, really the only way for individuals with disabilities to get funded support was through an institution or being in an institutional setting. And the thinking at that time was really that individuals were best supported in those settings. And so if they wanted to get community-based services, there was really no funding stream to be able to support that process. And, eventually it was recognized that institutions are not the most appropriate setting for everyone. And through Section 1915C of the Social Security Act, allowed states to ask for waivers for the existing Medicaid regulation of institutionalization. So essentially you're waiving that right to the institution and instead using that funding stream to support receiving services in the home and community settings. So some eligibility basics. There's 3 here. So you must have a qualifying diagnosis. And I'm going to talk specifically about individual waivers on the next couple slides, but for the ones that we'll talk about, it's either an intellectual disability or autism. You must meet financial eligibility, which means that you must be Medicaid eligible. And you must meet functional eligibility. So for individuals with intellectual disabilities, there is a IQ criteria. For autistic individuals, there's no IQ criteria. However, you must demonstrate limitations in 3 out of 6 major life areas. And I believe that's my next slide. So this is where it can get a little tricky at times because there is some misconceptions around that IQ criteria of eligibility, but I just want to reiterate that if your child or if you're applying for yourself, individuals on the autism spectrum, so when you have that autism diagnosis, you do not have to meet a certain IQ criteria to be eligible for the waiver. Rather, you must show a substantial functional limitation in 3 or more of the major life activities listed here on this slide. So there's self-care, understanding and use of receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, and capacity for independent living. So typically, the MHID or Mental Health Intellectual Disability Services office, which there's an MHID office in every county, supports determining functional eligibility by using what's called an adaptive functioning assessment. So typically it's either the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scale or the Adaptive Behavior Assessment System. And if you have had this completed for your child or yourself in the past, you should be able to use the same one. So this is kind of a broad overview, and then I'll go into the specifics of the waiver programs. So all of the waiver programs fall under the Office of Developmental Programs. So there's the Bureau of Supports for Autism and Special Population, which oversees the autism-specific waiver programs. So there's the Adult Autism Waiver and the Adult Community Autism Program. And then the Bureau of Community Supports oversees 3 other waivers, which are open to individuals with either autism or intellectual disabilities. These are the Consolidated Waiver, the Person Family Directed Supports Waiver, and the Community Living Waiver. So the 2 autism specific waivers, first I'll talk about the Adult Autism Waiver. So it's available statewide. You do need to be 21 years or older, have an autism diagnosis, and then meet that financial and functional eligibility criteria that we talked about. The second one is the Adult Community Autism Program, or ACAP, and this is a managed care model. And what that means is that it integrates both physical health care and behavioral health care. And this is only available in 4 counties. So you must be a resident of Chester, Lancaster, Cumberland, or Dauphin counties. Again, the same eligibility criteria as the Adult Autism Waiver, so being 21 years or older, having an autism diagnosis, and meeting financial and functional eligibility criteria. These are some examples of some services that fall under the Adult Autism Waiver. So things like supporting the purchasing of assistive technology, behavior supports, community-based supports, employment, family supports, things like speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, supports coordination, and nutritional consultation. And then under the Adult Community Autism Program, you'll see that physician services. So it's a majority the same services, but physician services are included under here as well, which again is the physical health portion because it's more of a managed care model. So these are 2 waivers under the Bureau of Community Supports. So as a reminder, these waivers are open to anyone with an intellectual disability or autism. There is no age limit for these waivers. So it says except for developmental disability. If you have a developmental disability, you can only have like that vague term developmental disability until the age of 8. After that, you do need a formal diagnosis of an intellectual disability, autism, or other formal diagnosis of a different developmental disability. You can have like a dual diagnosis. You could have a diagnosis of an intellectual disability and autism, but you don't need that. You can just have autism or ID. Again, you have to meet functional and financial eligibility criteria, same as the autism specific waivers. So these waivers do have cost limits. And what that means is it's kind of a cap for services. So the PFDS waiver has a cost limit of $33,000 per person per fiscal year. I do believe that it just increased a little bit, I think to 35. And there's an additional dollar amount that is specific to employment services. The consolidated waiver has the same eligibility criteria, the same diagnosis criteria. However, in this waiver, there is no annual cost limit, which means that ideally any services that you need would be covered under this waiver. And you would need the consolidated waiver if you're looking for something like residential supports, because that wouldn't be able to be funded under the PFDS waiver. And then kind of in between those 2 is the community living waiver. Again, all of the same diagnosis and functional and financial eligibility criteria. However, this has an individual cost limit of $70,000 per person per fiscal year. So it's a little bit more than PFDS, but there is still a cap. And some examples of services that are included in these waivers. So you'll see that it's very similar to the autism specific waivers and the ID. So these 3 waivers used to be historically only available to individuals with ID, but it's been about 5 years since they were opened up to individuals with an autism only diagnosis as well. So the providers are also becoming more knowledgeable about supporting individuals on the autism spectrum. And so next, we'll talk a little bit about what the application process looks like. So the first thing that you would do is contact your county MHID office. Every county has its own office. And on our website, we have an entire listing county by county of all of the MHID offices. So I can pull that up after this to show you where it is on our website. You'll call them, express that you're interested in applying for a waiver, again, for your child or for yourself, and they'll schedule an appointment with you to get some more information. And then, you'll be asked to bring a lot of documentation likely. So everything, including your social security card, birth certificate, proof of residence, proof of Medicaid, diagnosis information, functional and financial eligibility. And we have an entire checklist of the materials that you'll likely be asked to bring. The process can vary a little between counties. So again, it's really important that you contact your county MHID office to learn more. In Philadelphia County, we recommend that folks are thinking about beginning this process around age 14 or as they begin transition planning in high school. So you don't have to wait until you're 21 or until you're about to graduate to apply for the waiver. People are doing it as early as age 14 so that, again, it can take a while to get all this paperwork together and go through the process of applying. So we talked about this, but again, you'll be asked for evidence of your autism diagnosis. So it will likely be from a standardized assessment, either that was done in school or and comes from a licensed professional. And then the adaptive functioning assessment that shows limitation in 3 out of 6 life areas. And then if you need support accessing one or both of these, so either the autism diagnosis piece or the functioning assessment piece, the MHID office should be able to support you with contacting a provider. Again, this is the checklist that I talked about. So it kind of provides an overview of all the documentation you might need, but again, you might be asked for other documents or forms. So once you go through that, entire process of applying, contacting your county, and then if you're found eligible, right, that is kind of the reason why you're showing all this documentation, is to determine your eligibility for a waiver or your child's eligibility. So once you're found eligible, you'll choose a supports coordination organization and be assigned what's called a supports coordinator. This was where I previously worked. So it's similar to a case manager. So when you don't have any services, they mostly will be talking to you about your goals, what you might want your life to look like, what kind of services you need. And then once you have services, once you have a waiver, they'll support you in kind of coordinating all of those services and managing that. However, you'll be assigned a supports coordinator, and then before you have a waiver or before a waiver is assigned to you, you'll go through what's called the prioritization of urgency of need for services, which is called a PUNS, and complete an ISP. So the PUNS form is really, let me go into this next slide. It's a form that's collected by the county, and it looks like a survey that someone will go over with you. It includes information, it asks questions about the current services that you're receiving, your future needs, and it really helps the county prepare for your needs in comparisons to other needs. And it's updated at least once a year. So this is very important because the waiver is not first come, first serve. It's based on need. So there's different need categories. There's emergency, critical, and planning. And there's also another category, fully served, on here. And when counties are, so there's only a certain number of waiver slots that counties have available. So when slots become available, sometimes the number of slots is increased, sometimes people may pass away. there's can be, several reasons why slots become available. But when slots become available, counties will look at, okay, who's on the waiting list, and where are they in these different PUNS categories, who's on the emergency, critical, or planning category. And that process helps determine who gets that waiver slot. So I really like to emphasize for families that it's important to be actively involved and engaged in the PUNS process, and really be advocating for your needs during that time. And then just some resources. So here's some more information on diagnosis. So on the specific criteria for an autism diagnosis, the CDC has some great resources. And then we have a resource bundle for newly diagnosed individuals. We have some resources on prevalence. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network is also a really great resource. And I can also share a copy of these slides afterwards too, in case that would be helpful. This is our support group map, which I can walk through. So let me just get through the remainder of my slides. This is a transition toolkit collection. So it's broken down by age group, everything from newly diagnosed to older adults, so that it makes the resources a bit easier to find. We have a waiver resource collection, which is one of my favorites to share with families. So everything from what is a waiver to the waiver options in Pennsylvania, checklist for registering for services, some of the items that I talked about today. We also have a sister website, what I like to call is ASD Next. It is its own website. It's separate from paautism.org, which is ASERT's website. But ASD Next is really a portal for youth and young adults on the spectrum. So we have autistic bloggers who share about their employment experiences, their lives in general. We have a social calendar and events that are specific for youth and young adults. We have a lot of social stories, everything ranging from visiting the doctor's office to this one's, just an example of going to the library, to the criminal justice system. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check it out. We have an LGBTQI resource page. It offers resources for parents and families, individuals, as well as providers, and includes information about family support groups and clubs and groups for individuals. And these are just some additional resources and websites. I know a lot of the information that we talked about today can be very overwhelming, and navigating that on your own can definitely be confusing and frustrating at times. So, as you're looking for perhaps services or waiver options, or just more information about autism, it's really important to use websites and organizations that are providing evidence-based research or services. So these are some that we recommend. And here is our contact information. And so before I see if there's any questions, I just wanted to take a moment to walk you through the website. So just bear with me while I pull that up. Oh, and I did want to also talk about CAP. So I know one of the questions that I had received was about who to contact if you have questions or grievances related to OVR, which is the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation in Pennsylvania. And so in Pennsylvania, we have CAP, or the Client Assistance Program. It's the federally designated statewide advocate for individuals with disabilities seeking OVR services. So it's a free organization, and they can help support navigating OVR services, as well as, just providing some guidance to you. So their website is equalemployment.org. And then this is the ASERT website. This is our contact information up here again for the warm line. You can search resources by category. So, if you want to search by a specific role, you can also use the search bar up here to search like a particular topic. So if I wanted to search about employment, It'll bring up all of the resources for me. We have an e-learning platform if you're interested in that. We also have a really great events calendar. A lot of the events are still virtual because of COVID, but we are adding to this pretty much daily as we get information, and all of the events are vetted by our team. So this is what I wanted to share. It's our support group map. It's a map of the entire state, and you can go in and click on your county, or you can also click the drop down, but I'll go in and click on Chester County here, and it'll bring up support groups and self-advocacy groups in that county. And we're always encouraging folks, if you know of a support group or self-advocacy group that's out there that's not on our map, please send it to us and we'd love to add it. So same thing for Montgomery County and all the counties throughout the state. And then this is the county government offices map that I wanted to share. And it's similar to our support group map. However, when you go in and click on your county, it'll bring up all, sorry, I clicked on Bucks County. It'll bring up all the key government offices in your county. And so what you're gonna wanna do for the waiver is go to this, the MHID Early Intervention Program. So in Chester County, it's the Mental Health, Intellectual, and Developmental Disabilities Office, and then all of their contact information is there, and that's who you would reach out to kind of begin that waiver application process. And same thing, like if you wanted to click on Montgomery County, it'll just be under the MHID program here. So I hope that was helpful. Any questions at this time? And again, you'll have ASERT's contact information. So if you want to reach out to us to talk about like anything specific about your child or yourself, or some issues that you might be having, we'd be happy to do that too.
Tisha, we did have a question come up in the chat box. It was when you were talking about waivers. Someone asked if you could explain what the cost means, and I think, and if you want to type in the chat box to correct me, but I think what they're referring to is the dollar amounts that you're talking about for each waiver. Like, what does that mean? And is there a cost to families for waivers? Yeah.
And thank you for letting me know, Sasha. I actually can't see any of the messages. Like my chat is empty. So just let me know if there's other messages too.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. So the cost limit that I was talking about. So what that means is that whatever services you have, that is the cap for them. So all the services have different prices. Typically it's like by a particular unit. So this is just an example, but say supports coordination actually doesn't go towards it. So say, you have OT and it costs $100 per 1 hour. And you have like all of your services combined cannot exceed that $70,000 or that $33,000. So again, there's only the 2 waivers that have that limit. It's the PFDS waiver and the community living waiver. All of the other waivers don't have a limit. So ideally, all of the services and supports you need should be covered under there. And someone asked if I can share a copy of the slides. Yes, I can definitely do that.
Thanks, Disha. We have another question. How does my son live on his own through a waiver, and who helps him through this process? Since there's a lot to know and there's a lot that parents don't know as far as legal things or anything like that.
Yeah, so there are residential supports available under the adult autism waiver and the consolidated waiver. Again, you would need to reach out to your county to kind of get that whole process started, and then they can provide some additional information to you about like if there's specific providers in your area that you might be interested in learning more about. And these residential spaces can really vary. So, sometimes a provider will buy a house and they'll have a few people live there with different roommates. Again, the individual should be able to choose their roommates. Some individuals might live independently and have staff come in a couple times a week. Some residential homes may be fully staffed. Some people have done what's called life sharing, where they will live with someone who doesn't have who doesn't have an intellectual disability or autism, and move into their home and share their home and space with them. So there's a lot of different residential options that are available through the waivers. But again, that first step would really be to contact your county MHID office.
Right now, I don't see any other questions. Does anybody else have any? Oh, wait, hold on. Where can I find the county person, and is it on the slides?
So I'm not sure what county you're in for the person who asked, but it's on our website. We have an entire listing. So if you just go to paautism.org and search county government offices, you just have to click on your county and it'll bring up the contact information for your county.
And they also asked, will they get the slides? But you did say, so we'll send the slides out. We're also recording this session. So we'll be sending out a recording to everybody who's in this session, and we'll send the slides along with that, unless Disha wants to send them separately. But either way, you'll get the slides as well as a recording of today's session.
And then I'm getting a few direct messages, so let me just read them. So the one question is, does the waiver have a waiting list if we need the service but have to wait a few years to get the waiver, and then it gets cut off? So yes, there is a waiting list, and that is why, and I can speak from my experience in Philadelphia County, the MHID office there recommends people to get on the list at 14 or start this process at 14. Again, remember that it's not first come, first serve. So, at the age of 14 or 18 or up to 21, if you're receiving services through the school system, you likely won't be as high on that, on the list based by need. So it's really important to be engaged in that PUNS process, and advocate for your needs. So someone who has graduated, doesn't have any services, might need, is showing that they need a lot of support and services and they don't have any, is going to be a lot higher on the waiting list than someone who's in high school and receiving services. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply early. And while you're waiting, it can be very hard because, again, there's limited services out there. But to engage with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, you don't need a waiver. So you can directly reach out to OVR to begin, talking about things like employment. And they also recommend the support group map. Connecting with other families can also be really helpful to learn more about some of, the free services or supports that might be in your area. So someone asked me, if you receive one type of waiver and supports need change, can the waiver you have change? So yes. So if you are receiving, for example, the person family directed supports waiver, so the PFDS waiver, which has that $33,000 cost limit, so your services can only go up to that amount. I've had it when clients are right, they're using every dollar. And again, in that yearly PUNS process, we're showing that this is not enough, like they need more services. And then the client has moved to either the community living or consolidated waiver. So again, even if you have a waiver, if it's not meeting your needs, it's really important to be advocating, and you can always change your waiver. Someone asked, during the waiting period, do you not receive any services at all? Yeah, so if you're not on a waiver, if you don't have a waiver, the only service that you would really receive is supports coordination. So you would still have a supports coordinator who can kind of, hopefully share some resources with you and talk about some other supports that might be available that are not the waivers in your county or in your local community. Do you have to go back on the waiting list for your waiver type to be changed? No, you don't have to go back on the waiting list for your waiver type to be changed.
Tisha, I had a question pop up. Someone's asking how long it takes to get a waiver. I don't know if there's actually a straight answer to that.
Yeah, I know that is the worst answer to give, but there is no like magic number that I can tell you, because again, it's based on need. So I've had instances, where people have gotten it very quickly because they have no services, they might be on the verge of being homeless, perhaps. There's like some very severe crisis situations that are happening. So I've seen them get waiver very, very quickly. And I've seen other folks who maybe don't need it as emergently, like again, wait several years to receive it. So it can really vary. And again, I'll really just emphasize the importance of advocating during that PUNS process. So I think sometimes, or the feedback that some families have provided me is that they don't want either for themselves or for their child to kind of talk about their limitations or their needs in that way, and really like to focus on the child's or their own strengths. However, the point of the whole PUNS process is to talk about the services and supports that you need to be able to, live a fulfilling and meaningful life actively engaged in your community. And it's not in any way meant to highlight some of the barriers or challenges that you're facing, but I just really highlight how important it is to be honest about your needs during that time, because that is the PUNS form is what places you higher or lower on the waiting list.
I have another question here about the IDD waivers. So how strict is the IQ cutoff for a waiver for IDD? Because some families have kids with 3 different IQs that hover above or below the waiver requirement.
Yeah, so the IQ cutoff is, I believe, 70, and it is, that's the cutoff. However, it is only for individuals with ID. So if your child has autism, that doesn't apply to them.
Thank you. And then I have, can you talk about transportation, the service transportation in the waiver? For instance, will someone be able to drive their child to and from a job?
Yeah, so it may vary, like what services are available in your county or like what providers are available in your county. So again, I'd really recommend for you to reach out to the county office. But I've seen, parents get reimbursed for driving their child back and forth from like a day program or other waiver services that they might be receiving. People have received funds to support public transportation. People have received funds to support accessing like Ubers or cabs in remote areas. So it really varies based on the individual's needs.
Thank you. Okay, so what is an IDD waiver as far as what's it stand for? I guess, can you explain a little bit about what IDD stands for? When we're talking about the IDD waivers.
Yeah, so under the Bureau of Community Supports, the three waivers that are PFDS, community living, and the consolidated waiver, those 3 were historically only available to individuals with an intellectual disability, which is that ID. So about 5 years ago, so you could apply if you had autism, but you also had to have an intellectual disability. About 5 years ago, they changed that eligibility criteria and made it open to individuals who had only an autism diagnosis. So to those 3 waivers, the PFDS, consolidated, and community living waiver, you can apply either if you have an intellectual disability, which is ID, that's the acronym used for it, if you have autism, or if you have both, opposed to the adult autism waiver and ACAP, which you can only apply to if you have autism or if you have an autism diagnosis.
Thank you. So it looks like, I think if I'm reading this correctly, she might be looking for what IDD, the acronym is. I think it stands for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities.
Oh, yes.
So that's what the acronym is. It's just a short way for people to talk about, to differentiate between the two types of waivers as far as intellectual disability or intellectual developmental disability or the autism waiver. No problem. Now, another question. Let me see. This is more of a statement. As a parent fully involved in this process, I would like to let parents truly understand how complicated and frustrating and time-consuming all of this is, which I totally agree with. And it's imperative that they keep a binder and document every person, every email, every correspondence that you receive. I think that's wonderful advice, because it can be, from a parent perspective, very frustrating, very confusing. It's not as straightforward as your kids in school, they're entitled to have this funding for their education. And that's why we hold these Transition at 21 seminars, is hopefully it makes it a little bit easier to understand piece by piece. We definitely want to be able to provide as much information as possible. And I think that's a great piece of advice, to keep a binder, try to keep everything organized, because you're going to be thrown a lot of information, and especially a lot of acronyms that you're not used to, because they're a lot different than in the education world, which has its own acronym language. So I think that's great. So thank you so much for sharing that. I had another question come up. Someone's looking at the PA Autism website. If they're having trouble navigating it, is there like a helpline they can reach out to, or I don't know if you want to, if we could put it in the chat, maybe like an 800 number or something.
Let me put it in the chat.
Okay. Great, thank you, Disha. So if anyone has any questions about the PA Autism website or anything like that, there's an 800 number and an email address in the chat as well. So feel free to pull that, and it'll be on the slides too. When we send the slides out, it's on the last slide. And we're happy to pass that along with the recording, so you guys will have that. I am getting messages that people are feeling very stressed out, and I just want to reassure everybody that Disha is here to help, VFES is here to help. So please know that there are people here to help you advocate, to help you get resources. So feel free to reach out to anybody with any types of questions. There's no silly questions, because we all understand that this can be a very complicated and overwhelming time. So please don't hesitate to reach out anytime.
And I will also just say, I wanted to share another resource. I'm sorry that folks are feeling stressed out. I know it's not the intention of this.
I don't think they're stressed out for you.
It is a stressful topic. And just, even at work, like this was my job, is like working with waiver services. It's still, just because like the system is consistently changing as well. It can be hard to keep up with things. So the PA Family Network holds waiver workshops, actually, which go very in depth. Like they have all the way from beginner to advanced workshops. And there's one coming up, I think, on tomorrow, on Friday. So let me share this in the chat. And again, this is on our events calendar. I'll share the link for that as well in the chat. So these workshops are really great if you're interested in really, learning more and kind of diving deeper into waivers and kind of navigating that whole process. I would recommend going to one of the PA Family Network workshops. So again, there's one coming up tomorrow, and I believe they're held monthly. So please check that out if you want to learn more.
That's great. Thank you, Disha. So there's a couple things. So yeah, first, we wanted to clarify, there's a couple comments in the chat saying, if you're not stressing them out, it's just the process that's stressing them out. But also another great piece of advice, which one of our participants put in, and I completely agree with, and this is what I tell a lot of families when I talk to them and they're feeling overwhelmed, because it is so much, just look at it one piece at a time. And I think the first step and the most important step is, like this participant is saying, register with your county.
Yes.
Because once you do that, if you're registering as far as like the Intellectual Developmental Disability Office, you'll be assigned a supports coordinator, like Disha was talking about, and that person will take the reins. So they'll help you walk through the process. They'll tell you step by step. They'll help you with the puns. So basically everything Disha just went over, once you register with the county, you'll be assigned somebody to help you walk through those steps. So if there's anything you can walk away with today, it would be register with your county as your first step, and maybe that helps take the stress off a little bit, but that be your one priority, would be to register with the county, and then from there they can help you walk through the process. And Disha just put the link in the chat, so you have that to be able to find your county office that'll be able to help you register and get things rolling for you. Did you have any other questions in your chat box, Disha?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't have any either, but if anyone does think of anything, feel free to type it on in. I just want to take a minute to thank Disha for her time, for coming out and sharing all these great resources with everybody. I know I've learned a few things, so this is great. I'll certainly be, tapping into some of these resources as well, and I hope everybody here does. And if anyone needs anything, there's a bunch of links in the chat here. And you could feel free to reach out with any questions or anything like that. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box as well. So if anyone has any questions afterwards, or if for any reason you don't get a link or a recording or the slides or anything, please feel free to shoot me an email and just say, hey, I never did receive that. It's going to take me a couple days because for some reason, my computer takes forever to download the recording. So if I don't get it to you by tomorrow, I will get it to you early next week. So just keep an eye out. We have all your email addresses because you did get the link. So we will be able to send that out to you. But my email is in the chat if anyone has any questions. Disha, any last words or anything you need or want to share?
No, I would just really echo, Sasha, your sentiments. If there's one thing that you can take away from this training, contact your county office. That's really the first step, and that'll support you in learning more about the process in your county, and hopefully get you connected with the supports coordinator as well.
Great, thank you so much. Feel free to reach out, everybody. And I just want to thank you again, Disha. Thank you, Sheba, who's behind the scenes and doesn't like to be, called out, but she helped us set this up and she's doing a great job. So look for an email from us and have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.